It was close to midnight in Denver, and snow was falling thick and soundless. Streetlights cast soft halos across empty sidewalks, and the city seemed to breathe slower beneath the weight of winter. Christmas lights blinked in shop windows, their colors fading behind the drifting white. Ethan Cole pulled his coat tight as he stepped out of his company's tower on 16th Street. At 30, he was already a millionaire, a man who built empires out of code and cold ambition. Yet lately, success felt like static, endless noise with no melody. He paused on the steps, letting the wind sting his face. It was easier to stay late at the office than return to his penthouse, where silence waited like an old ghost. Since Grace died 3 winters ago, every room in his home had become a reminder of how empty achievement could be. Ethan reached his car and was about to unlock it when something caught his eye across the street. On the frozen steps of the Denver Public Library, a small figure sat curled against the stone railing. At first, he thought it was a pile of discarded clothes. Then the shape moved. A little girl 5 maybe sat shivering in a torn hoodie, her knees pulled to her chest. Snow dusted her hair and lashes. She wasn't crying, only staring into the night with the stillness of someone far older than her years. Ethan hesitated, then crossed the street slowly. "Hey," he called softly, stopping a few feet away. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. Her lips were blue, her hands trembling. When she finally spoke, her voice was no more than a whisper. "He hurts me every night." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Who does?" She turned slightly, eyes darting toward the shadows. "The Boogeyman," she said. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought it was just a child's nightmare. Then he saw the bruises, dark, uneven marks circling her wrists, and a strip of duct tape still clinging to her sleeve. His breath caught. "Sweetheart, what's your name, Sophie?" she murmured. "Okay, Sophie, I'm Ethan. You're safe right now." "All right," but she shook her head. "He always finds me." Ethan knelt and slipped off his wool coat, wrapping it around her shoulders. The fabric swallowed her small frame. She gripped it tightly, eyes wide and unsure. In one hand, she held a tiny paper crane, the edges worn soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. "I make one every night," she said, "so he can't find me. But he always does." For a man who could move markets with a single phone call, Ethan had never felt so helpless. He took out his phone and dialed 911, his tone steady but cold. "There's a child here. She's injured, possibly abused." Front steps of Denver Public Library. The dispatcher assured him help was coming. But when the patrol car arrived, the officer barely looked at Sophie. "Kids make up stories," he muttered. "Shelters are full tonight." He handed Ethan a form, the kind that solved nothing, then drove away into the snow. Sophie watched the taillights fade. "He'll come again," she whispered. Ethan stared down at her, feeling something in his chest break open. Something he hadn't felt since Grace's last breath. He folded the useless form in his hand and said quietly, "You're coming with me." Her eyes flickered with fear. "Is your house safe?" "It has locks alarms," Ethan said softly. "And me." They crossed the street together, the wind spinning snow around them like falling stars. When they reached his building, the doorman blinked in surprise. Ethan Cole, Denver's untouchable tech prodigy, carrying a little girl in his arms. Inside the marble lobby, Sophie tightened her grip on his coat. Her gaze wasn't on him but fixed on the glass doors. "He's out there," she whispered. Ethan turned. Across the street, beneath a flickering light, a man stood motionless. Mid-40s, dark coat smoke rising from his hand. Even from that distance, Ethan could feel the man's stare, cold, deliberate. Their eyes met for one still moment. Then the man smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just enough to promise something Ethan didn't yet understand. Ethan blinked, and the man was gone. The elevator doors slid open with a muted chime. Ethan pressed the top floor button, the motion smooth and final. As the elevator began to rise, Sophie pressed the paper crane to her chest. "Will he find me here?" she asked. Ethan looked at her small, frightened face and felt a steadiness he hadn't known in years. "Not here," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Snow continued to fall outside, covering the streets, softening the edges of the world. And somewhere between the frozen silence below and the warmth waiting above, 2 lives, one broken, one terrified, crossed paths for a reason neither could yet name. That night, under the hush of Denver's winter, everything began to change. The elevator carried them upward in silence. Sophie's small fingers clutched the edge of Ethan's coat, her paper crane pressed tight against her chest. The soft hum of the machinery was the only sound between them. Ethan glanced down once, her lashes trembled heavy with exhaustion. When the doors opened, they stepped into the top floor of Union Station Tower, a penthouse of glass and quiet air. The city stretched beneath them, its lights dimmed by the curtain of snow. To most, this place would have felt magnificent. To Ethan, it felt like a museum of solitude. "Let's get you warm," he said gently. He set her down on a leather sofa and crossed the room to start the fireplace. Flames caught flickering gold against the marble. The warmth spread slowly, chasing the chill from the air. Sophie didn't move at first. Her eyes traveled across the room at the tall windows, the gleaming steel, the empty kitchen island. "It's so big," she murmured. "Do you live here alone?" "Yes," Ethan replied quietly. "Too much space for one person." He walked to the kitchen, poured milk into a small pan and warmed it. He hadn't done that in years, maybe since Grace. The smell of warm milk brought something tender and painful all at once. He added honey just like Grace used to. When he handed Sophie the cup, she hesitated before taking it. "Is it magic milk?" she asked. "Maybe," he said with a faint smile. "If you believe it is." She took a small sip, eyes closing, as the warmth spread through her. "It tastes like Christmas." That made him smile, though the sound caught in his throat. "When was the last time you ate?" She thought for a moment. "Yesterday, I think. Maybe." He found crackers and cheese, setting them in front of her. She ate slowly, politely, as if afraid the food might vanish if she wasn't careful. Ethan watched her hands, tiny, trembling, but steady in effort. When she finished, she looked up. "Are there monsters here too?" "Not in this house," he said firmly. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, shaking a faint dust of snow loose from the ledges. Ethan adjusted the thermostat and dimmed the lights. "You can sleep on the couch tonight. I'll be right over there." She nodded, still clutching the paper crane. "I make one every night," she whispered again. "It keeps the bad things away." He crouched beside her, studying the little bird in her hand. "Who taught you to make these?" "My mom," she said softly. Before she went away, the words ached more than he expected. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then she must have been very kind." Sophie gave a tiny nod, eyes heavy now. She said, "Good people make light and bad people hide from it." Ethan let that linger. He hadn't believed in good or bad for a long time, only in gain and loss. But as he watched her eyes flutter closed, he thought maybe her mother had been right. He stood, walked to the security console near the hallway and checked the camera feeds. Every door was locked, every alarm set. He should have felt secure. Instead, unease gnawed at him. His phone buzzed a message from Maria Torres, his housekeeper and closest thing to family. "Everything okay? Snow's bad tonight." Ethan typed back, "I'm fine, but I need you early tomorrow." He hesitated, then added, "And bring first aid supplies." He turned off the phone and looked toward the couch. Sophie was asleep, her small frame curled beneath a gray blanket. The fire painted her face in warm light. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him, something almost like peace. Then a faint sound broke the silence, a soft click. Ethan's eyes snapped toward the terrace door. The latch was trembling, moving slightly, though no wind should have reached it. He walked over quietly, heart thudding. Through the frosted glass, the city lights blurred in white haze. He leaned closer. For a moment, he thought he saw movement outside, a shape tall and still, just beyond the reflection of snow. Then it was gone. He checked the lock. Secure. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe. Returning to the console, he replayed the camera feed from the building entrance. Snow blew across the lens, but nothing else moved. Still, something in his gut wouldn't settle. He turned back to the couch. Sophie's breathing was even now, the paper crane rising and falling with each breath. He stared at it, at the fragile wings trembling in the glow of the fire. "You're safe," he whispered, mostly to himself. "You're safe here." Outside, the storm thickened, blanketing Denver in white silence. Inside, the world felt smaller, warmer, alive again. Ethan sat near the fireplace, eyes fixed on the flames, his mind caught between disbelief and duty. How could a world built on logic allow something like this child to suffer? He stayed awake long after midnight, listening to the wind press against the glass, every sound amplified by his new awareness that safety was a fragile thing. At one point, Sophie stirred and murmured, "Don't let him in." Ethan leaned forward. "I won't," he whispered. Her breathing steadied again. The storm raged through the night, but inside that glass tower, a man who once lived only for numbers sat guarding a child who believed in paper cranes. And as the fire cracked softly, Ethan realized something strange. He didn't feel empty anymore. Not while she was here. Morning came gray and slow over Denver. Snow still covered the rooftops, muting the world in pale light. Ethan hadn't slept at all. He sat by the window, a half-finished cup of coffee growing cold beside him. The city looked softer in daylight, but he knew the night hadn't left it, only changed its shape. Behind him, Sophie stirred on the couch. The gray blanket had slipped from her shoulders, and the paper crane rested on her chest. She blinked awake, eyes hazy with sleep. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "I was keeping watch. For the boogeyman." "For both of us," he replied. The intercom buzzed, making Sophie flinch. "It's okay," Ethan said quickly. "It's just Maria." He opened the door to find Maria Torres wrapped in her thick winter coat, a thermos in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. "You look like you've wrestled a storm," she said, stepping inside. Then she noticed the child. "And who's this little angel?" "This is Sophie," Ethan said. "She needed somewhere safe." Maria's warm eyes softened. "Safe is good." Hungry, Sophie nodded shyly. Within minutes, the scent of pancakes filled the apartment. Maria hummed as she cooked, her voice soft and familiar. Ethan hadn't realized how much he'd missed that sound. While Sophie ate, Maria examined the bruises on her wrist with a nurse's careful touch. "These are fresh," she said, frowning. "You should take her to the police." "I did," Ethan replied. "They didn't listen." Maria sighed. "They never do at first, but we'll make them listen." When Sophie finished her breakfast, Maria gave her a small bowl of colored pencils. "Draw whatever you like, sweetheart." Ethan watched as Sophie bent over, the paper tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. She drew quickly, sure lines forming shapes that made Ethan's stomach tighten. A tall man in a dark coat, a ring on his hand, shaped like an animal's head. "That's him," she said softly. "The boogeyman." Ethan leaned closer. "How do you know him?" "He came to the place where I stayed before," she said. "He said he was helping, but he took me somewhere dark. There were other kids too." Maria crossed herself quietly. "Lord have mercy." Ethan took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Sophie," he asked gently, "do you remember his name?" She shook her head. "But he has a ring, a lion, gold." A chill moved through Ethan. He had seen a glint of gold the night before when that man stood across the street. Maria touched his arm. "Ethan, do you think he followed her here?" "I don't think he said." "I know." He went to the security console and replayed the footage from the building entrance. For a long moment there was nothing, just wind and snow. Then at 2:43 a.m. a figure appeared on the screen, moving along the outer wall. Tall, heavy coat. The camera caught only part of his face, blurred by snow, but the movement was deliberate, like someone marking territory. "What is that?" Maria whispered. "Chalk," Ethan said, zooming in. On the screen, a faint white symbol glowed against the dark stone, a circle with a line slashed through it. Maria exhaled. He was here. Ethan's hands tightened on the console. Not again. He picked up his phone and called an old contact. "Ryan Blake," he said when the line clicked. The voice on the other end sounded half amused, half asleep. "You only call me when something's on fire." "It might be," Ethan said. "I need you to come to my apartment." "Bring your gear." An hour later, Ryan arrived, tall, unshaven eyes, too sharp for early morning. He carried a black backpack that hummed faintly with electronics. "You sound nervous," he said. "That's new." Ethan showed him the footage. Ryan's humor vanished. "That's no random creep. Look at the gate professional. He's been trained to move unseen. Can you trace him? I can try." Ryan connected a scanner to the console, lines of code spilling across the screen. "If he used any tracking tech, I'll find it." While Ryan worked, Sophie watched from the couch, clutching her new drawing. "Is he a good guy?" she asked Maria quietly. "The best," Maria said. "He helps people who don't even know they need it." 15 minutes later, Ryan straightened. "Found something. Micro signal near your terrace. Someone planted a tracker. It's active." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Can you remove it?" Ryan grinned. "Already did. And I sent the signal back. Let's see if our friend likes being watched for a change." Maria looked uneasy. "What if he comes back?" Ethan met her eyes. Then he'll find we're not the same people he scared last night. Sophie tugged at his sleeve. Will he be mad? Probably, Ethan said softly, but that's how bullies work. They hate when someone stands up. Outside, the storm began to clear sunlight, breaking through the clouds. For the first time, the city looked bright again, glittering across the snow. Ryan packed his equipment. I'll dig into that symbol, see if it means anything. You'll hear from me by tonight. After he left, Maria took Sophie to the kitchen to bake cookies, filling the apartment with a warmth that almost felt normal. Ethan stood by the window, staring down at the street below. Somewhere out there, the man with the lion's ring was watching. Ethan didn't know his name yet, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wasn't going to let him win. And as Sophie's laughter drifted from the kitchen light and fragile like the wings of a paper crane, Ethan made a silent promise to the city beyond the glass. This time he whispered, the monster doesn't get to walk away. The afternoon sky over Denver had turned the color of pewter, heavy with clouds that promised more snow. Ryan returned to the penthouse just as Sophie and Maria finished arranging a row of tiny paper cranes along the window ledge. Their wings fluttered slightly in the draft as if alive. Pretty army you've got there, Ryan said, setting his laptop bag on the counter. They keep bad things away, Sophie replied solemnly. Ryan gave her a small salute. Then I'll take their side. Ethan joined them, a mug of black coffee in his hand. He hadn't left the console since morning. Did you find anything? Ryan's grin faded. Yeah, more than I wanted. He opened his laptop, showing a string of photos, corporate logos, and financial documents. That tracker from your terrace. It's registered to a private security firm called Harlan Strategic. Guess who owns it? Ethan's pulse slowed, every beat heavy. Marcus Harlan, he said quietly. Ryan nodded. You know him too well. Ethan set down his mug. We were partners once. He invested in my first startup, then tried to steal it when it took off. Ruthless, charming, the kind of man who believes rules are for other people. Maria crossed her arms. And now he's hunting children. Ryan shrugged. Looks like he's been funding shelters and youth programs through shell companies. On paper, it's charity. In reality, he clicked through the files until an image appeared, grainy surveillance of a warehouse. A faint logo matching Harlan's firm painted on the wall. This place is off the books. Ethan leaned closer. Where is it? South side, near the rail yards. You won't find it on any registry. Maria whispered a prayer under her breath. Ethan straightened his jaw, tightening. We're going there tonight. Ryan blinked. You've lost it. That guy's dangerous, and you're not exactly bulletproof. I'm not asking you to fight, Ethan said, just to watch the feeds trace his movements. If he's using his company to hide something, I want proof. Maria looked between them. And what about Sophie? Ethan's expression softened. She stays here with you. Lock the doors, no exceptions. Sophie's small voice broke the tension. You were going after him, aren't you? Ethan knelt beside her. I'm going to make sure he can't hurt you or anyone else ever again. She studied his face for a long moment. Then take this, she said, handing him one of her cranes. For luck. He took it carefully, tucking it into his coat pocket. Then I can't lose. By the time night fell, the storm had returned, swirling across the streets in restless spirals. Ethan drove alone toward the south side headlights, cutting through the haze. The address Ryan had sent led him to a narrow industrial block, the kind of place the city forgot existed. He parked near a row of abandoned buildings. Snow crunched under his boots as he walked. The air smelled of rust and diesel. Ryan's voice came through the earpiece. I've got eyes on your GPS. You're close. There's movement inside 2, maybe 3 heat signatures. Ethan found the warehouse marked with a faded Harlan logo. A single light glowed above the door. He pushed it open slowly. The hinges groaned. Inside, the place was cold and vast. Empty desks lined the walls, and broken crates lay scattered across the concrete floor. But what caught his attention were the symbols, white chalk circles drawn along the walls, each crossed with a line. Ryan, he whispered. I've seen this before. On my building. Yeah, Ryan said, typing. It's an old gang marker from back when Harlan used to fund street projects. Means claimed territory. Ethan moved deeper into the space. A faint sound echoed footsteps, then a voice smooth and calm. You always were curious, Ethan. Ethan turned. Marcus Harlan stood near the far door, tall and polished as ever. His black coat gleamed faintly in the light. On his right hand, the gold lion's ring glimmered. "Didn't expect to see you playing hero," Marcus said, smiling. "I thought you preferred profits to people." Ethan held his ground. "You're using children to hide your operations. Sophie Lane told me what you did." Marcus's smile thinned. "Children imagine things, especially damaged ones." Ethan's fists clenched. "She's not lying." "Maybe not," Marcus said softly. "But who will believe her? You think you're the first man to come after me with righteous fire. You'll burn out like the rest." Ryan's voice crackled in Ethan's ear. "Get out, man. I'm tracing his signal. Half the building's wired." Ethan ignored him. "You heard her," he said, "and I'm going to make sure the world knows it." Marcus chuckled low and amused. "You think the world cares? They build statues for men like me." He stepped closer, his cologne sharp, his tone almost tender. "Walk away, Ethan. You've got money, reputation. Don't trade them for a ghost of a girl who'll forget you by spring." Ethan looked straight into his eyes. "You made one mistake." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Ethan reached into his pocket, tapping the small device hidden there. "Underestimating what a man becomes when he finally has something worth protecting." From his car outside, Ryan triggered the recorder. Every word since Marcus's first taunt had been captured, his arrogance, his half-confession. Marcus seemed to sense it. His face darkened. "You'll regret this." Ethan took a step back. "Maybe, but not tonight." He turned and walked out into the storm. Behind him, Marcus's voice rose like a curse swallowed by the wind. Ryan's voice came through the earpiece again. "Got everything. It's enough to start a case." Ethan looked at the crane in his pocket. The paper was slightly bent, its wings fragile. "Then let's finish it," he said. Snow whirled around him as he climbed into the car. For the first time since that night on the library steps, he felt no fear, only purpose. And far behind him in the darkened warehouse, the gold lion's ring gleamed under the single flickering light, waiting for the next move in a war that had just begun. 2 days later, Denver's skyline gleamed under a brittle winter sun. The storm had passed, leaving everything bright and deceptive, like calm before another blow. Ethan hadn't slept much since that night at the warehouse. The recordings Ryan captured were strong, but not enough. They needed more than Marcus's arrogance. They needed proof of his crimes. Detective Laura Briggs sat across from Ethan in his office at Cole Technologies. Her short brown hair framed a face carved by too many late nights. "You've got guts," she said, setting down the file he'd handed her. "But guts don't win cases. Evidence does." Ethan nodded. "Then help me get it." Briggs tapped the folder. "You understand what you're walking into. Marcus Harlan's got politicians in his pocket, lawyers on retainer, and a public image built on charity. If this goes wrong, you won't just lose your company, you'll lose your freedom." Ethan leaned back. "I lost my peace a long time ago." "I'm not losing that child too." The detective studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "All right, I'll reopen the Sophie's case quietly. You'll get your chance, but it has to be clean." That evening, Ethan met with Caroline Reed in his conference room. The lawyer's calm presence filled the space like order itself. She spread the documents across the table. "Briggs is right. We can't make a move until we have something solid, an admission or a transfer proving Harlan's foundation was a cover for trafficking." Ryan joined them via video, calling his tone brisk. "I hacked into Harlan Strategic's encrypted drive. There's a meeting scheduled tomorrow at your old company's tower, some kind of private investor pitch. Guess who's hosting it?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Marcus." Caroline looked up. "If he's meeting investors, he'll be in his element, overconfident, talkative." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then that's where we catch him." Briggs agreed to place a small team in the building's lower floors, plainclothes officers ready to move, when she gave the signal. Carolyn would attend as Ethan's legal counsel. Every word, every gesture would be recorded through Ryan's hidden audio system. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood by the window of his penthouse, Denver, glowing below. Sophie was asleep in the next room. Her paper cranes lined along the dresser like little sentinels. He touched one gently. "Tomorrow we finish this," he whispered. When morning came, the city sparkled under sunlight. Ethan, dressed in his first suit in months, black with a dark gray tie armor, more than clothing. Mariah hugged him at the door. "Be careful," she said. He smiled faintly. "Always." At noon, he stepped into the tower's boardroom. Marcus was already there, smiling like the king of his own empire. "Ethan Cole," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "Didn't think you'd accept my invitation?" "I never could resist a good performance," Ethan replied. Marcus chuckled, lowering himself into the leather chair across the table. Caroline sat beside Ethan, her briefcase open, every movement precise. "Let's discuss your proposal," she said. For an hour, Marcus talked slick, charming, confident. He outlined philanthropic ventures, housing for underprivileged youth, rehabilitation programs. His words dripped with sincerity, the performance of a man who'd spent years perfecting deceit. But beneath the polished phrases, Ethan heard what others might miss: slips of arrogance, hints of control. When Marcus mentioned selective placement and special donors, Caroline subtly pressed the recorder switch under her sleeve. "You sound like you take personal interest in your programs," Ethan said carefully. Marcus smiled. "I believe in hands-on work. Children need guidance, discipline. Some might call that exploitation," Ethan said. Marcus's grin froze. "Careful, Ethan. You wouldn't want people thinking you're jealous." Caroline met Ethan's eye signal enough. They had what they needed. She gathered her papers and stood. "We'll be in touch," she said smoothly. Marcus leaned back, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Leaving so soon, Ethan rose too. "Some deals aren't worth signing." As they exited, Briggs's voice came through Ethan's earpiece. "We've got him. Audio's clean. Stand by." But Marcus wasn't done. He followed them into the corridor, his tone darker now. "You really think this ends me?" he said quietly. "You're still the same lost boy trying to prove you matter." Ethan turned, the voice low but steady. "I matter to her." Marcus's gaze sharpened. "The child, she won't remember you when she's grown, but she'll always remember fear. That's what I teach." Carolyn's hand tightened around her briefcase. Ethan's expression hardened. "Then class is over." A shadow moved behind Marcus, Detective Briggs stepping forward, badge in hand. "Marcus Harlan," she said. "You're under arrest for child endangerment, assault, and conspiracy." For the first time, Marcus faltered. "You can't, already did," Briggs said, nodding to the officers emerging from the elevator. "You're done teaching." The hallway filled with the click of handcuffs. Marcus turned toward Ethan, fury burning through his mask. "You think this makes you righteous? You built your fortune the same way I did, on control." Ethan's voice was quiet. "The difference is what I chose to do with it." As they led Marcus away, snow began to fall again, outside the glass walls, soft and slow, like the world exhaling. Carolyn exhaled too, a long, shaking breath. "It's over," she said. Ethan looked toward the city below. "No," he said softly, "it's just beginning." And somewhere miles away, a little girl was folding another paper crane, one more winged promise that monsters don't always win. 3 days after the warehouse, Denver glittered beneath a clear, merciless sky. Ethan hadn't rested since the night he faced Marcus Harlan. The recordings Ryan captured were powerful, but not enough. They needed a confession. Detective Laura Briggs sat across from Ethan in his office, her badge glinting under the morning light. "You want to take down Marcus Harlan," she said. "Then we do it by the book. One mistake and then he walks." Ethan nodded. "Then help me make it perfect." By evening, Caroline Reed joined them. Calm, precise, the lawyer spoke with quiet force. "Ryan's traced a meeting tomorrow at Harlan's investment firm. He's hosting a pitch for donors. If he brags, we'll have him on record." Briggs leaned forward. "We'll wire you both. I'll station my team on the lower floors. No heroics, Cole. Just get him talking." That night, Ethan stood by his window, the city glowing beneath him. Sophie slept down the hall, her paper cranes lined in rows like guardians. He whispered, "Tomorrow I end this." The next day, sunlight flashed off the tower's glass facade. Ethan walked in beside Caroline, his expression calm, his nerves steel. Marcus Harlan was already waiting, dressed in charcoal gray, his lion's ring catching the light. "Ethan Cole," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Didn't think you'd still play this game." "I came to see what game you were playing," Ethan replied. Marcus chuckled. "Always suspicion, never trust. That's why you'll never be me." They sat across from each other, Caroline quietly setting a folder on the table. Hidden within her sleeve, a recorder blinked green. Marcus began his pitch charity youth programs, housing for the vulnerable. His voice was smooth, his lies polished. But his pride was his weakness. You take personal interest in these projects, Ethan said. Of course, Marcus replied. Discipline is everything. Children need structure and fear. Carolyn's pen froze above her notes. Ethan leaned forward, tone low. You mean control? Marcus smiled faintly. Call it what you like. It keeps them quiet. Outside the room, Detective Briggs listened through her earpiece. That's it, she whispered to her team. Ethan stood. You're right about one thing, he said. They won't be quiet anymore. Marcus frowned. What are you? The door opened. Briggs stepped in, badge raised. Marcus Harlan, you're under arrest for child endangerment and trafficking. Marcus froze the mask, slipping. You can't prove. We already did, Briggs said. Two officers moved forward, handcuffs snapping shut. As they led him away, Marcus turned back toward Ethan, voice dripping venom. You think you're righteous? You're just a man who lost control. Ethan's voice was calm. Maybe. But I found purpose. Outside the tower, snow began to fall again, soft, endless, forgiving. Carolyn exhaled beside him, trembling with relief. It's over, she whispered. Ethan looked toward the white city below. No, he said quietly. It's only the beginning. And miles away, a little girl was folding another paper crane. One more promise that monsters could fall and hope could rise again. Today's story comes to an end, but its echo still lingers in the heart. What do you think? Give us a score from 1 to 10 and feel free to share a few words in the comments. Every voice here is valued and heard. Before you go, let me ask you, gently, are you doing okay today? If your heart feels heavy, let this place be a quiet corner where you can share and find comfort. See you again in the next bedtime story, where love and hope remind us that no matter how dark the night may seem, kindness will always prevail.